Our goal today is to talk about what it is to have genuine conversations about our differences. And that's why Gena and Reggie and myself, we're talking together today. So Reggie and Gena, thank you for being with me on this and together. Just to ask you, first of all, to start off, is there anything that you want to add as to why we're doing this video today?
I think I'll just kind of start with, it's difficult. And one of the things that so often we say, how can people make change? How can we make sure, what has happened with George Floyd and so many others, how do we ensure that that doesn't happen again? And part of the answer that I agree with and that is common is to begin to have conversations with people that are not like you. Different racial backgrounds, ethnicities, and the like. But sometimes we don't even know where to start, and we don't understand the discomfort and what that feels like. And so I know it's part of my hope that though we're not able to, talk for everyone out there, what we can do is begin to have those conversations kind of out there where we are vulnerable. We begin to see how those differences affect how we live our lives, so that we really can have the empathy, the compassion, and then truly walk in unity to overcome them.
I would add, I just believe now is the time. This is a time where people are coming together and people are seeing how things have not been right. And it's one thing to talk and have signs, but for things to really change, you do have to have relationships, and you have to get to know people who are different from you, who are not in your circle, so to speak. And the best way to do that is to have a conversation, and it may be uncomfortable. You may hear some things that you disagree with, but for me, what I really want people to recognize is you have to respect things even if you don't agree with them. And that's a basis of how you develop a healthy relationship with someone who's different from you.
Gena, it's interesting that you say that those conversations can be uncomfortable. To your all's point, I mean, there is just a real need for that open conversation, for an honest conversation between people who are different. And we're talking really a lot about between white people and African Americans today. But as you said, these conversations can really be difficult and uncomfortable. Gena, you spoke a little bit to this, but I want to pull this out a little bit more. Why is it so uncomfortable, and what would you say to that?
I believe one of the main reasons that it's uncomfortable is that you're telling your story, and that really is about vulnerability and showing areas that I may perceive that have hurt or that have been, that I feel weak in those areas. And when I share that with someone and they come back and say, well, you are wrong to feel that way, or that doesn't happen, it really just shuts me down, and it really impacts how I perceive that person. Can they agree to disagree? Can they put their feet in my shoes to really understand what I experience and what my husband experienced and what my sons experienced on a day-to-day basis, even if you don't. And I think that's the hard part, because I don't feel heard or valued or seen.
It's almost like if it's not part of my reality, I don't see how it can be a part of your reality.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it becomes really difficult to not feel like it's an attack.
Yeah.
And just because, for instance, we talked obviously in getting ready for this about some of the differences that Gena and I experienced just having our children. Mm. And, for mine that like to go out jogging or running in the neighborhood. And, there are things we have to tell them. Look, if a police officer pulls up, for instance, okay, this is how you respond. And though every parent might tell their child the same thing, recognizing that from our experience, the potential cost for not responding that way, we feel like there's an increased likelihood that could go south real fast. Mm-hmm. And then even if they did respond, quote unquote, correctly, the cost could still go the wrong way. It could still go really bad, really fast. And is that an attack on Chris Ownby, who is white? No. But it's not Chris Ownby's job to fix that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we feel like, okay, the attack is coming, and so I've got to either defend or fix, versus ask the questions to understand how that makes me as a dad feel, how that makes Gena feel, who has a son who's, at driver's license age, and has to have those conversations about driving.
And what you do, and where you hold your hands, and where you keep your driver's license, and where's the registration, and where's the insurance. You have to have all of those different conversations. It is walking around the store and picking up something and not putting it in a basket immediately, because if you carry it in your hand, there may be a perception that you're trying to take something. So I've had to tell them, when we go in a store, we don't put anything in our hands. We put it directly from what we pick up into the basket, so people will know that we're not trying to take something.
Wow. Gena, I want to use this word again. Okay. What I hear you and Reggie both saying are that there are realities in your world that, let's just be frank. When my daughter goes out running in our neighborhood, that she doesn't experience the same thing. I don't have to prep her in the same way. And to hear that from me is I'm just going to be honest. It's to me, it's sad. But what I hear you saying is that there's an importance in me wanting to understand that part of your world and what you all experience in your family.
Exactly. Yes. Because you run and my husband walks, but he has to think about where he's going to walk before he walks. You have walked in your neighborhood without any concern about walking around your neighborhood, because that's your neighborhood. He has to think about, are they going to think I'm in the wrong neighborhood? Are they going to call to say there's a Black guy walking around our neighborhood and he's walking for exercise? So he has to contemplate what he's going to do to keep him safe. And that's just that has been a part of our reality.
Chris, you said something before, and as we've talked about this in the past, you see a police officer and it makes you feel safer.
Yeah.
We see a police officer and our mind begins to say, keep going, don't stop. Keep going, don't stop. I think in having these conversations and building relationship, when someone feels like their experience is being denied, or that their reality has been said to be false, it makes it difficult to continue to walk down that path of connection, of strengthening the relationship, and then overcoming the change. Because, the question then becomes, how did we get there? And how do we change that mentality? But first, it starts by recognizing one another's reality. And that's not an attack on anybody. It's reality.
And for us, it is our reality. And we often know perception is reality. And just to dismiss, and being dismissed, I think, is one of the hardest things that comes across, is that what you're seeing isn't really happening.
Yeah.
And when we're dealing with this, I need my friends to, again, try to walk a mile in my shoes.
Well, you know, it's interesting, you know, especially what you said, Reggie, with what do you do when you see a police officer? And I mean, just put it out there. We've all talked about this. We all of us know police officers, or
Mm-hmm.
friends with police officers.
Mm-hmm.
Reggie, your dad was
My dad was one. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when there are probably a lot of people out there that when they hear the news of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and all those other news events that we hear, and a lot of people will say, you know, these are horrible events. These are things that should have never happened. They're terrible, but you know, they're more isolated. It's not really indicative of a wider problem. And y'all are kind of speaking to that more, that these things are indicative of a wider problem. Would that
Yeah, I believe just how we are perceived, it doesn't matter. I mean, yes, these are very telling and very serious and heartbreaking incidences, but it's a life of 1,000 tiny cuts.
Hmm.
It is going to a store and being followed because people believe you're going to steal.
Yeah.
It is my sons being seen as threats because they're tall, but they're young, but they look bigger than their age. So people see them as threats. It's those little tiny cuts over a lifetime. It is the fact that my dad had to drink out of a colored water fountain and couldn't eat in restaurants. And people think that happened so long ago. It wasn't that long ago that it occurred. So it is, unfortunately, the life I've lived for these 50 years that I've been on the earth.
And I think, though not everyone can unpack some of the systemic, you know, things that have been built, you know, whether it's in our country or in this world, it's the willingness and to acknowledge it, the willingness to begin to look at, you know, things like housing inequities, or, you know, incarceration, not just necessarily incarceration rates, but just the media messaging, and how that affects how, you know, how just a Black man might be viewed. For instance, you know, I can remember looking on the Just Busted, or the Right to Know, and comparing that with what I saw on the news. And, you know, on a particular day, I saw, you know, 2 or 3 Black men on the news, but then I looked in, you know, the booking report for that day, and I realized, man, the number of whites that were incarcerated and booked that day far outweighed, but I didn't see that on the news. And so how does that make me feel, you know, as a Black man, and how do I recognize to navigate through this world where we work alongside one another, we, you know, we go to the restaurants, and everything that we do where it's integrated, but feeling like you're at a disadvantage simply because of the color of your skin.
You struggle with feeling like, am I supposed to be here, or am I going to be treated badly in my service when I go to a restaurant? Because there have been times my husband and I have been the only people of color in a place. And you're always aware. And it's almost like you have to wear, and I hate to say this, it's almost like you're always have your guard up because you don't know when it's going to come. You always are prepared because the hurt is so deep that you put these walls up so that it doesn't happen. And when you hear friends that really, again, you're on the baseball team with them, you're on the football team with them, they love your kids, but then you hear them talk negatively about another African-American boy, and your mind automatically goes, if they say that about that person, what are they really saying about my sons that they say they care about and they love? And it's just, yeah, it's just heartbreaking sometimes.
You know, I'm listening to you all, and in my mind, there's 1,000 more questions that come up, you know, because I think we acknowledge there are things that me as a white person, I don't understand as much. Mm-hmm. And as someone who wants to understand more about your experience, about the experience of other African Americans out there, their families, their kids, what they go through as parents, as individuals, what are things that you would recommend that someone like me would do to better understand?
I think the first thing I would encourage you to do is to recognize that African Americans are not a monolith. We are not all alike. We don't all think alike. We don't all behave alike. And just really recognize that that's the first thing. And then ask questions again. If you're being genuine and you really want to know, if you have someone in your sphere of influence that you feel you can really ask these questions of, I would say ask them. Now, don't ask somebody you don't know. But if you have a relationship, and I think it should be a mutual relationship where I can ask questions that I don't understand and you can ask questions that you don't understand. I think that's something you can do as well.
And it becomes an ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Because you can't have all that conversation in, like, for instance, this 15 to 20 minutes that we're talking here.
Right.
And like she said, though we're people,
right?
We're individuals. Now, there are some very shared experiences. And in that conversation, and as we learn about each other, to accept the reality of there are things that it's just real. I mean, there are some things that it's hard to believe it happens, but as opposed to feeling attacked or saying, no, that didn't happen, hear it, understand it, and know that at times, yes, perception is reality. Mm-hmm. I would say the second thing would be, we can all educate ourselves better. Reading, watching, there are great documentaries that have been produced. There's a lot that's out there that helps understand African American culture. And I think that becomes another kind of a second step that people can do to really just educate, because it then helps you bring to the conversation what you're reading, what we're learning, to kind of have that meet flesh and blood, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and this is kind of a side note. I was researching books on racism issues, on Black culture, that kind of thing. And hopefully this is an encouraging thing. The books right now are sold out. You can find them. So I'm hoping that people are doing what you're saying, Reggie, and that there's a lot of education. I want to thank you both just for a very honest and forthright conversation, your experiences and views. for helping me understand more. And just to let everybody know out there who's watching, Gena and Reggie and I have developed both a professional relationship, but also a friendship for over 2 years now. And we've been able to have these conversations way before this video. Mm-hmm. And so this has been an ongoing conversation for us. And it has helped me to really better understand differences that I know are just not part of my reality. So thank you all so much.
I'm gonna, as you close, I'm gonna add this. The value of what you're saying is every individual wants to be known, heard, understood. And I think our goal is as we have our relationship, just the three of us, is I think in the midst of that, we all feel that we are making an effort to hear, know, and understand one another.
Mm-hmm. Reggie, I can't think of a better closer for that. Again, thank you guys so much for talking with me today. And for the folks out there who are watching, we hope this has been helpful and that it will start the difficult but important conversations that need to happen. Thank you.